all of that started from something that I thought was a waste of time because I was I was measuring the wrong things.
Welcome to the Know Your Ship podcast, presented by eHub. I'm your host, Frank Dolce. You do a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
So is it because you like doing it, or is it because you're good at it? Is it because people tell you should do it?
You mean speaking or what?
Yeah, like speaking. There's good clips of you doing stuff. I mean, you seem like you put yourself, or is it just because you're in the marketing industry?
So some of it, I don't know how long of a story.
I mean, you're a public speaker too.
Yeah. So I do like it. I like speaking. I don't like creating presentations, but I love speaking. And I actually prefer a conversation over.
It's so much better.
Yeah. I mean, just creating a slide deck is probably my least favorite thing of anything to do. But getting on stage and presenting it, I love. So I do love the speaking piece. I actually, for a while, I was doing like a gauntlet of podcasts because I met a guy who runs the Social Media Marketing World conference, Mike Stelzner, and he kind of took me under his wing. This is like 9 years ago. And he was like, so first of all, if you want to get more clients, you should speak more. If you want to speak more, you need to get on people's podcasts and practice, answering questions, because that was my biggest social fear, was the Q&A sessions at the end of a presentation. I was like, what if somebody asks a question I don't know the answer to? And so I signed up for some service and did, I don't know, 60 podcast episode or something like that. And he was right. I mean, it did loosen me up quite a bit, and it made it so it was like, I can handle probably any question people throw at me.
Did you learn the trick? Did you learn the trick to answering questions? Because
I learned some tricks.
Because someone is always going to ask you, there's always going to be a question where you don't know the exact answer.
Yeah. You can either answer the question that you wish they would have asked.
Exactly.
Or you just say, I don't know.
I never say that. I just answer a different question.
Yeah.
And it seems to placate. I mean, that seems to be the answer, the solution.
Just throw out a word salad, and then it's like, well, this guy said it's a bunch of stuff.
I hope it's not a word. Yeah. A lot of acronyms and cliches, and then just move on.
Yeah.
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 Well, it's great to have you here. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah. This
is the one and only. I'm going to ask you a question, actually, before we even get started. We've kind of started, but what feels more comfortable for you as an introduction? I'll give you a couple examples. Would you like me to say, thank you so much for being here. This is Chris Daley, Smart CRO. Or would you like, we have been trying to get this guy. I can't tell you how meaningful it is to have him here on the set with us. The one, the only Chris Daley, Smart CRO.
You don't need the fireworks. No, you can just, you can do whatever you want to do. But
I struggle with that. When we have guests come on about how to introduce them appropriately.
Yeah.
And maybe just this more subdued.
I'm good with a chill intro.
Yeah. I think that fits here.
Because I'm not a name that people are hanging on every word of. So
if we had someone, do you remember, well, I don't know. Do you follow the Utah Jazz at all?
Yeah.
There's a great Utah Jazz player named Thurl Bailey.
Okay, I know. Yeah,
you know Thurl Bailey. He still does stuff with the broadcast. Okay, so he was on the podcast. By the way, he's like 6'9".
I've met him before.
6'11", 6'9".
Yeah, he's huge.
I didn't have enough space to sit. His whole body went across the whole studio here.
Yeah.
We'll call it a studio.
Yeah.
So you're saying maybe someone like him, the introduction.
Oh yeah,
more,
for sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah. But just for Chris Daley, Smart CRO. Okay. When I was telling people prior to doing any real research about Smart CRO, I kept telling people hey, I think he does like a fractional chief revenue officer.
Yeah.
Do you run into that occasionally?
Yeah. Not not a ton, because my business is almost primarily done through referrals. And so when I get a referral, it's like, let me introduce you to a guy that can help with conversion rates. And then as soon as you say conversion rates, then the CRO piece makes sense.
Yeah.
It's usually from cold contacts that are reaching out that are like, searching for job title CRO for finance on LinkedIn. And they're like,
yes.
Oh, sweet. Let's hit this guy up. So
yes. Well, and the genesis behind the opportunity to visit with you here today is the upcoming Commerce Catalyst 2025, September 4th and 5th this year. September 4th, Thursday evening, is a pitch competition. I think it's female founder pitch competition, and like 100 different organizations have applied. It's been very popular. And then Friday, on the 5th, at the Le Meridian Hotel here in Salt Lake, there's going to be a bunch of workshops and breakout sessions, and we have a panel discussion to end the evening that is hosted by eHub. And you're actually going to lead one of the, not a breakout session, you're gonna host a workshop with one of your customers, with one of your clients.
Yep.
And what is do you have a topic that you're going to discuss?
So the topic is, it's still a work in progress, but the topic right now is going to be how to improve conversion rates on your website. I mean, So what we're going to do is we're going to talk through, this is a client that I've been working with for about a year and a half, and we've done a lot of things that have worked really well, a lot of things that haven't worked very well. And so I kind of want to just go through the story of how do you come up with ideas, of what to improve on your website? How do you execute, a testing strategy? Like, how do you build these tests? What does a test look like? And then what do you do in these different scenarios? Because there's really three outcomes. When you run an A/B test on a website, there's three outcomes. One outcome is you find a winner that improves conversion rates, and that's great, right? And then it's like, sweet, okay, I know what to do if I find a winner. I put it on my website. The second outcome is nothing happens. You test a bunch of different things, and all of them perform the same. That's a real head scratcher for most businesses, where they go, okay, well, if they all perform the same, does that mean that I already have the best conversion rate I can have? Does it mean I have an apathetic audience? Like, what does that mean? And then, of course, the third outcome is all of your test variations lose. They all perform worse. And that's a situation, I actually view it as a huge opportunity and a huge win. But most businesses view it as, crap, we failed, back to the drawing board.
Close the doors.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of go through those three different scenarios and go, okay, let's go through a test where the first scenario happened and then what we did. And let's go through the second scenario and what we did and the third, and kind of talk about how you can capitalize on these different results.
When you say A/B testing, does everybody know what you mean?
No. And in fact, the way that I usually describe it to my clients, because most of my clients have never done this before, is I actually will use like the medical industry, where it's like, hey, you know how they run clinical trials for like whether or not ibuprofen helps with headaches? You'll give one person ibuprofen and you give the other person a sugar pill, right? And then you measure the results. That's what we're doing, but just on your website.
Gotcha. That's a great way to explain it.
Or
people immediately catch on.
Yeah. And, or I'll use, because, in-person physical stores like Walmart, Target, all those, they've been playing around with their store layouts for decades, right? Where they'll test, let's take all the Midwest locations and let's put the soda up by the entrance, and let's put the candy bars by the cash register, or let's put the milk in the back corner, whatever, they'll play around with where they place different items and see what generates the most revenue. Same thing again, but just in this case, we're doing it digitally.
Isn't it just for a grocery store? I mean, isn't it like the Disneyland model? Disneyland has it, and mostly amusement parks, I guess. Like, you get off a ride, or you're getting onto a ride, but you have to go through some opportunity to spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
As you're coming off of the ride or as you're getting onto the ride. Isn't that the same? Wouldn't that be the same for a grocery store? Like, you put all of the stuff that people want, where they have to track through the store, and then, oh, God, I need some beef jerky also, and I need this other.
Exactly. Yep. Which IKEA is famous for. They've done it the best, right? Where you can't
it's like a
check
light
out
bulb going on.
You can't check out without looking at all of their products.
Everything. I don't know how many And now, as I'm thinking about it, there's countless items from IKEA that I didn't need, that I purchased.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All the way through the line. Okay, that's a good start on Smart CRO, and we'll get back to that. And I want to dig into your business a little bit more as we go along. By the way, again, just a quick plug: Commerce Catalyst, September 5th, Le Meridian. Go to the website, and you can get involved in what should be a really fascinating workshop. I'll participate as well. That should be fun. You started doing this. I love the backstory. So let's just talk about the backstory. You already mentioned you were at UVU. You were working in marketing and doing a bunch of SEO stuff. And I'm going to leave it there. You were working a bunch of SEO stuff. You were getting a lot of people to come visit, but it wasn't turning into additional revenue.
Yeah. So in fact, I had an experience. This was like the light bulb moment for me. So I had a board presentation. So I went in and had this great presentation prepared. I was sure I was going to get a raise or promotion or something. So I go in, I have all these charts going up and to the right. We had tripled our organic traffic over about a 6-month time period, which was a lot easier to do 14 years ago than it is now. But so we had tripled our traffic. And so I'm showing all these great metrics. And then the CEO stops me and he's like, okay, so we've tripled our traffic. What did that do for our revenue? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, my job up until that point in my mind was get more traffic. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, I don't know. So he said, well, let's look into that. So I went back afterwards, started digging in, and realized all of this traffic we were getting wasn't converting. We had tripled our traffic, but our conversions were flat.
What could you tell? I don't mean to interrupt you, but what could you tell about the traffic at that time? This is like how many years ago?
14, 15 years ago.
Yeah. So what could you tell about the traffic at that moment in time?
So, I mean, basically what we were looking at that point in time is what was the source of the traffic? Mm-hmm. So, this traffic came from Google or whatever, mm-hmm. And we could tell, geolocation type of things, but the most relevant thing was the source of the traffic, right? And so these people are all coming from Google. We had a pretty good idea of what keywords they had searched for, right? Mm-hmm. And so there was some intent data that we had. Mm-hmm. And that's about it. And so the other challenge that we had is then we ask ourselves, well, why are they not converting? Mm-hmm. And so in our minds, there was really just one of 3 reasons. First reason is these people suck, right? Like it's the wrong person to send to the site. The second reason is our site's broken, mm-hmm. right? Like it just doesn't work and something's wrong with our site. And then the third reason that nobody really wanted to acknowledge is we're doing a bad job on the website, right? So, of course, me as the traffic guy, I can't accept reason number 1. Like I think these people
they're all
qualified.
Right. They're all the right people.
Yeah, it's got to be the right people. So, okay, it's got to be one of the other 2 reasons. So, I go and I ask our development team, is the site broken? And they're like, oh no, we thoroughly QA everything, 99.9% uptime, like everything's working great.
This is the design. The website.
That's the development team. Yeah. The development team. The actual website. Is it broken? It's not broken.
No, it's not broken. That's their baby.
Yep.
And they built it perfectly. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
So then I go to the design team and it's like, hey, do you think there's anything with our design that's not converting? And it's like, no way. We have all these great designers. They went to the best design schools. Our designs are cutting edge. They look amazing, mm-hmm. Et cetera. And so, that was it. Those were the only questions I could ask at that point. And so I started researching a little bit more and found that you could run an A/B test on a page and say, okay, let's create a copy of one of our landing pages mm-hmm. and let's make some changes. And let's see if we make some changes, can we move the needle? So I took one of our landing pages, I copied it. I actually plugged it into a tool at the time where you could build, like it was super bootstrapped. You could just build a landing page using a template. And so I plugged it into this template. I removed a bunch of our content. I changed a bunch of stuff. And then it got around to our design team that I was messing with one of their pages. So they looked at it and they said, you can't put that up on our website. Like, it looks terrible. You can't run that. And so, and I was like, I'm not going to launch it on the website. I'm just going to test it. And they're like, no, you can't test it. So I went ahead and tested it, and it converted. I think it improved conversion rates by like 16%. And so right there was two major aha moments for me. The first major aha moment was, we can move the needle here by making some changes. And not only that, we can move the needle, and nobody here knows what we need to do to move the needle, right? Like, there's not anyone here that's been focused on improving the conversion rate. Everyone's just been focused on building something that they like looking at. And the second thing that I realized was, this is way more fun than all the SEO stuff that I've been doing, because I just generated way more of a business impact in 2 weeks than I had in 6 months of SEO.
And that's a much better report to hand to the CEO.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I fell in love, and I switched and pivoted in my career to conversion rate optimization.
At that point in your career, who else was doing that?
There weren't that many people. So, I mean, we're here in Utah, and we have Adobe here. That was around the time that Adobe acquired Omniture. And so Omniture had a testing tool called Test and Target. And so there was a small group of people here in Utah that were, they had come from that background of helping build that tool, and then went out to other companies and started spreading the word. Oh, you need to do, testing. But there were not very many companies that did conversion rate optimization. And in fact, so the company, the next couple of jobs that I had to convince them that what I was doing was necessary. And so when I was considering breaking off and starting a company, it was actually, so one of the last job that I worked at, was at a company called One-on-One Marketing here in Utah. And it was a lead generation company for for-profit universities. And it was owned by, an investment group that owned a portfolio of, I can't remember, like 12 companies. And so, as we saw, we were able to like triple conversion rates on some of our landing pages in a pretty quick time frame, just implementing some of the strategies that I had created. And so they were like, hey, let's have you train all of our companies on how to do what you're doing. So I did that, did a training, showed them what we did, kind of walked them through how to do it. And several of the portfolio companies just said, that's awesome. I want to do that. I don't have anyone here that can do it. Can you just do it for us? And so I went back and told that to my wife, and my wife comes from an entrepreneurial family. I come from a very traditional, my dad worked the same job for 35 years, and he was a company man. And so I grew up thinking that's what you do. But my wife was like, well, let's start a company. Let's do it. And so I did. And
how much convincing did it take? Or were you like,
who? Of me?
Yeah. As soon as she said that, were you like, yeah, let's do this?
No, I was pretty against it. And just because I was like, well, what if it doesn't work? And, and the good thing about consulting and doing agency work is you can try it. And if it doesn't go well, you haven't invested a ton into like developing a product. Right. And so it's a pretty easy thing to go, oh, let's try it for 6 months. And that was my wife's pitch. She was like, just try it for 6 months. And if it doesn't work, just go back and get a job.
Lucky you.
And so
did you ever think that?
Oh, for sure. Geez. Yes, for sure.
Nailed it. So at that point, I want to talk about kind of this risk averse maybe mentality for people who are, there's a lot of people listening who are in the same position. Like, should I start my own? How did you measure and overcome this fear of taking that next step?
Well, so I'll say the first thing that I did is I met with, somebody that I would consider a mentor and who's kind of a serial entrepreneur. And I asked him just first of all, is this a good idea? And second of all, like what do I even do? And so, I mean, he walked me through, because it's funny, even the idea of starting a company is very scary if you've never done it. It's like people don't even know, what does that even mean? Like, do I have to get a building and like put my logo on? Do I need a logo? Like, what do I need in order to start a company? And so, you know, what the first thing he did is he talked me through some of the tactics of, it's actually super easy. You register the business name, you know, online, and it's like $30. And maybe you need a domain, maybe you don't, like, but that's all you really need is you need to legally register the thing. And then you probably need a bank account so that people can pay you. That's like really those are the two essential pieces. And so that was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's not too bad.
So you had all these overwhelming thoughts and he was like, no, let's start here.
Yeah. Like start with the
baby steps.
Exactly. Yeah. And the steps of like actually having a company that I can say, hey, my company is Smart CRO. I mean, my first company is called Daily Conversion. But
it's just clever.
Yeah. And it was funny because I won't go through the whole story, but somebody ended up buying, I let the domain lapse, and some Korean company bought my domain and is selling lipstick on there or something. What? I guess there was some good SEO value there, but anyways, so that was the first piece, is it's not as scary as you think. The second piece, and this I think is probably the most helpful feedback that he gave, was he said, you need to create a financial ripcord, like not ripcord, like a walk away point. So set a 6-month goal and a 12-month goal for yourself, a revenue goal. Again, with my business, it's a little easier than if you're starting a brand new product that you have to go through R&D for or whatever. But for my company, he's like, okay, set a 6-month goal, a 12-month goal. And if you're not at that goal by 6 months, then you pivot and like figure out what you need to do differently. And if you're not at that goal by 12 months, you walk away. You go get a job, because entrepreneurs are famous for just like, it's their baby and you just believe in it no matter what. You won't ever give it up. And so that was really helpful for me to go, okay, all right. And, and then the goals were easy, because I'm like, okay, by 6 months, I want to be at least covering all of our expenses that we have in our life. By 12 months, I want to like actually be making some money. And so I just set some financial goals for those, and built a really, really basic landing page for my website. Again, as a consultant, you don't need a whole lot. And then the other piece of feedback that he gave me as well was, he said, we'll start working on, just reach out to your network. And I was like, what network? And he's like, well, you have a network, right? And I didn't. So, I had attended conferences for some of the companies I had worked at, but I never went to networking night, because it's like, in my mind, the only purpose of networking was to find a better job. And I was like, I'm happy with my job, so why do I need to network?
Yes.
And so he encouraged me to start going out and attending networking events and just meeting people.
Yeah.
And that was a whole thing in and of itself too. I went to my first few networking events and printed off a stack of business cards and essentially just went around dealing out my card to every person that I, could meet eyes with. Like, hey, my name's Chris Daley. I do conversion rate optimization, and the next person, no meaningful conversations. And of course, nobody reached out. Nothing came of those, right? And so that was another piece of feedback that I eventually got from someone, which was, hey, instead of trying to meet every person here and give them your business card, try to have one meaningful conversation at this event. And that honestly changed everything for me. Because I was viewing it as I go to a networking event to get a client. And instead it was, okay, go to a networking event to have a meaningful interaction. Maybe it's with someone that could become a client. Maybe it's somebody that could send me clients. Maybe it's with somebody that could become a really great friend for me. And I did, I met a lot of really great friends and, and people that now, have generated business for me, but they didn't for a long time. And so that was great too. It also took some of the pressure off of the whole like sales thing for me, where it was like, okay, I'm not going to networking events to sell. I'm going to meet people. And
So I think a lot of people get held up in networking events because of that. You put that pressure on yourself about, I have to get a client. I have to convert something, or it's not worth my time and it's not worth the company's time. But your experience is building meaningful relationships when those opportunities arise was significant in the growth of your business.
Yeah. Yes, very significant. Yeah. And in fact, so I'll tell you a funny story. I you brought up how I speak at conferences, and the way I actually got into that. So when I first started my business, I was like, how can I get clients? One, of course, was networking and people referring business to me. The other path was I could go speak at conferences, right? Like I could get in front of a ton of people all at once and essentially show off what I do. And so I submitted a bunch of pitches to a bunch of conferences. And I mean, I think only one of them bit. So I got 2 responses out of probably 50 that I submitted. And one of them I immediately got in and spoke at. And the other one was a guy named Rich Brooks, who has a conference up in Maine called Agents of Change. And I had never heard of it. I had never heard of Rich Brooks. I didn't know anything about any of this. It was just a conference that I could speak at. And so I submitted this pitch to him, and he responded and said, hey, before I have people speak at my conference, I like to interview them on my podcast just to get a feel for the material and make sure it's a good fit. And I mean, this is 2014 when podcasting was still like, and so I was like, okay, whatever, fine, I'll do your stupid podcast. And so I go on the podcast, he interviews me, we talk. And then after the podcast, he's like, I actually don't think you're a good fit for the conference. And so I thought it was a giant waste of time, right? I was like, whatever, and I wasn't rude to him, fortunately, because he ended up having me back on his show, and he actually just emailed me just this week.
Oh, awesome!
But what did happen is, so that podcast went out. I thought it was a huge waste of time, and then out of the blue, this guy named Mike Stelzner, who runs Social Media Examiner and the Social Media Marketing World Marketing Conference. He's a very big name in the marketing world. He reached out and he's like, hey, I heard you on the Agents of Change podcast. I love your material. I'd love to have you on my podcast. And if that goes well, I'd love to have you speak at my conference. And so here was this thing that I thought was, again, I'm thinking about it as, okay, A plus B has to equal C. Like I've got to get on this guy's podcast so that I can speak at his conference so I can get clients. And rather than that, it was, hey, go have a meaningful conversation on the podcast. And then eventually maybe somebody will hear, what you did. So he ended up having me on his podcast. He loved the material. He had me. And then I spoke at his conference for 6 years in a row.
Wow.
And every time I spoke at that conference, I got clients. I mean, it was a great, and I did this 90-minute workshop. I mean, it was an intense, long workshop. But like I said, I mean, all of that started from something that I thought was a waste of time because I was I was measuring the wrong things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny that you say that because I think in your business, you are able to determine that people are maybe measuring the wrong things.
Yeah.
And so let's dive back into that. By the way, that's fascinating background. And speaking of the workshop, once again, you'll be at Commerce Catalyst September 5th, doing a workshop. And so people should attend, come on down, Le Meridian Hotel, and get to see the man in person. Okay, so when you started, now let's get back to you. Now you're doing your own kind of consulting gig. At that point, did you ever go back in-house with somebody, or have you been a consultant or running your own agency ever since?
So I've been a consultant ever since. Now, so what I did is from 2014 to 2016, I was running my own agency. And then in 2016, I merged my agency with another agency here in Utah called Disruptive Advertising. So I wanted to, at the beginning of this whole process, I wanted to like build this huge agency. I had stars in my eyes and I was like, I want to have tons of employees reporting to me. And, I want to whatever. I want to be making $10 million a year. And just, I had all these things in my mind. Right. And so this opportunity came up to merge with a bigger agency. My biggest problem initially was, I wasn't getting very many leads and very many clients. I would maybe get like a lead a month. And so, as a consultant, it's like enough to keep you fed, but like you can never grow a business there. And so, when I met, Disruptive Advertising, it was like, hey, we have 600 clients that are doing advertising with us. They're doing ads. We're sending traffic to their website. It would make so much sense to just like say, hey, we're sending all this traffic. Let's make sure that we're converting it. So you just come over here, keep running your business, and just pitch all of our clients. And so I was like, sweet. Yeah, let's do that.
That's
and
nice.
So I went over there. So from 2016, 2019, I was over at Disruptive Advertising running basically just running my conversion rate optimization agency as part of their agency. And we did grow it quite a bit. We grew it to several $1 million a year in revenue. And, and we had, 25 employees doing conversion rate optimization, and I hated it. And the bigger the team grew, the more I hated what I was doing.
What? But wait, you were doing, there had to be some alignment. You're doing what you love to do or what you were passionate about doing. So what was the source of this?
So there was a couple of big challenges. The first was, as we grew, by necessity, we had to hire people. And conversion rate optimization, unfortunately, is not a field that very many people work in. And so it was impossible to find qualified people that knew what they were doing. So what that meant was we were hiring a bunch of people that we were either cross-training from other disciplines or like taking some college student and teaching them fresh from the ground up. But the bottom line was all of our employees were very new to the industry. And so, what you do is I go and I sell these clients. I talk to these clients. I sell them. They know that I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. The strategy that I'm describing to them sounds amazing. And then you hand it off to somebody that has no clue what they're doing. And it's like, so I had to just hold every single hand, right? And as we got more clients and as we got more employees, it was more hands that I had to hold simultaneously. And it's almost like a mom that's like trying to get the house clean with 5 kids. If that mom was to run around and go, no, you got to scrub the corner right there. Oh, no, you have to scrub the dishes and put them in the dishwasher this way. No, like, whatever, like trying to micro, like I don't want to micromanage, but I had to because so the first thing that happened is that I had to hold a lot of hands because we had new people. And because we had so many new people, our clients would quickly lose faith that these employees knew what they were doing because the truth of the matter is they kind of didn't. And so we had a lot of client churn. And so I was constantly jumping on these, fire calls where I'm putting out fires. I'm trying to course correct and pivot on a strategy and doing all these things. And so it went from, I love talking with businesses and creating strategies for improving conversion rates. And then I love seeing those results. I love working with my clients and seeing conversion rates go up and seeing revenue improve. And instead of doing that, and so what I realized is, there's a way to figure this out, but I don't want to do it.
There's a lot of things in there. Like you want to be customer focused. I think that's, the vast majority of businesses want to be or should be or have that thought is customer first, customer focus. And that's going to win. And you couldn't be customer focused by just throwing a lot of people at it. Because they weren't trained properly. So that's the other thing is being really tactical about hiring and
having a training program that works,
having a training program, getting the right people in place, identifying people who are not engaged or aligned with the work that they're doing. And so, that's really fascinating. That's really interesting.
So I left in 2019 and started my current company, Smart CRO. And
so you left Disruptive. Tell me about that breakup.
Well, so again, there was some other changes that had happened in the company in the meantime. So when I went in 2016, there was maybe 15 employees. So it was a smaller agency. And when I left in 2019, there was I think 110 employees. So we had grown significantly during that time frame. And because of that growth, there was also some other changes that had happened, or major organizational shifts, right? Like when you go from 15 to 30 employees, you have to structure the company differently. When you go from 30 to 60 employees, you have to structure.
It's like all these growing up things that you have to do. It's
Yeah. And so the structure, when you have a flat organization at 15, it doesn't make sense at 60 or whatever. And so there were other changes that had happened in the meantime where it was like, okay, having CRO in a silo, like as an organization within an organization, doesn't make sense anymore, right? And so it makes sense anyways to kind of take it and disperse it out between the company. And so that was always something I was fighting with internally during that process, was like, well, I kind of like having everything under my wings, but it also doesn't make sense to have it all under my wings. And so at the time that I was thinking about leaving, it worked out anyways for the organization to say, okay, you know what? Your role is either going to have to shift, right? Or we take this and spread it out amongst the company, and we don't have somebody that's running a business within a business kind of a thing, right? And so it ended up working out really well. I think on both sides. And again, I left, and one of the great benefits that I had of working there was, again, when I was running my first business, Daily Conversion, I was pitching maybe one lead per month. When I went over to disruptive advertising, we had 600 clients, and I went through and I was pitching probably 20 times a week. And so all of a sudden I got to really practice and refine, and and now we had 150, 200 clients that were doing conversion rate optimization. So instead of when I was originally doing conversion rate optimization, I had 3 clients at a time. Now I had exposure to hundreds of different companies. I knew what kinds of strategies tended to move the needle, like even better than I did before. I had been able to really distill down the offering into a really, really good core offering. And so when I left and went back to doing my own thing, it was like, okay, I know exactly what to do. I know exactly who my target customer is. I know who I can move the needle for. I know what I need to do. I can generate way better results. So, I mean, it ended up being one of the best kind of learning experiences for my whole career.
So not, maybe not the ideal scenario long run, but for at least the short term, for those 3 years, you became an expert. You became the expert.
Yeah, it's kind of like
in the industry.
Yeah, you were talking about the Beatles earlier, and it's kind of like the Beatles playing all those shows, getting their 10,000 hours in, right?
Isn't it the truth? I mean, it's the same way with anything. You have to, 10,000 swings to get it right. So I think that's really important insight. You mentioned it with like going out to speaking engagements and putting yourself out there as often as possible to hone your craft. So giving yourself the opportunity to practice as much as possible to become an expert. That's a great part of the story. Okay. So now you're full-time, you have your own agency, and is that where you are today? Was that the start of where you are today?
Yeah. So I kind of went on, and again, there was a lot of things that I learned from being in a bigger agency that things that I wanted to change and things I wanted to do differently. So one of the challenges that we had with a bigger agency, and I think most big agencies have this, is the more employees you hire, the more moving pieces there are, the more organizational crap, like meetings and leadership trainings and all that, stuff that just like really takes you away from honing your craft, right? I mean, and it's not crap. I mean, there's great managers out there that are great because they've been through hundreds and hundreds of hours of trainings. But in my mind, it was like, look, the thing I want to do is work with clients. And so, cutting out a lot of the stuff that was unnecessary and going, okay, look, I am going to just crush it for clients. I'm going to focus on providing the very best results that I can. And because of all those moving pieces with a bigger agency, we had to move a lot slower on things. So for instance, we would bring on a new client to do conversion rate optimization. We would spend 2 weeks doing an exploratory process, and trying to figure out what the strategy was. And then we would take 3 to 4 weeks to get some A/B tests built and off the ground. And so it's like, 6 weeks before you even start doing anything meaningful. And in my mind, I'm like, look, I can get all of that done in a week. And so I'm going to bring on clients and we are going to be quick. We're going to get things off the ground quick. We're going to provide an impact quickly. And my objective, my focus is going to be on results. And so that's what I've done. I've built a company that is, we are able to get things going quickly because we don't have all of this extra organizational stuff, which again, if you're running a big agency and you offer 5, 6, 7 different services, you need to have all of that, the organization and the collaboration and the stuff. But again, it also slows you down. So because I'm coming in going, look, I do this one thing and I do this one thing really well and I can help you improve your conversion rates. So let's get things going. And so what I usually will do is I start out and I have a process that I've developed over the last 10 years, it's 3 simple steps. And so the first step I can plug in and get going very quickly. So the first step of my process is what I call the existence phase of my testing process. And when I say existence, what I mean is we are testing whether or not the existence of all the stuff you have on your site right now is actually helpful. So one of the funniest conversations that I have with every new client of mine is I'll start going through their website with them and I'll pull up the homepage of the website and I'll go through and say, hey, why do you have all of this stuff on here? You have this video on here. Why is that there? You have your best sellers on the homepage, or you have this, whatever, the testimonial section. Why is that there? And there is never everybody starts scrambling and it's like, well, if you think about the flow of the homepage, the first thing we want people to think about is this. And then, so it makes sense to have the video next. And then, you probably want testimony, but it's like, it's all just like guesswork, right? And some people will even flat out say, we have no idea. We just put stuff on there.
We should fill that up.
We put everything on our homepage. Yeah. Or they'll say, well, we got this template and it needed a video, so we put a video there, right?
So I think that is so fascinating because how long have we been dealing with websites now? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And still to this day, I'll hit a website I've never seen before and you can just tell it doesn't feel like it has any flow, any rhyme or reason. You're just clicking through pages or scrolling down and super confusing and can't get the messaging. All I want to know is about the team and I can't even get to that. And I want to, it would seem at this point in the evolution of websites, that would be much more dialed in. It's not. And maybe that's why it's, who knows? And then there are the others where you land on it. Great flow. It's very engaging. You can easily navigate to all of the stuff that you want to see. And so anyway, that's part of the thing that you'll go in and solve for people.
Yeah. So one of the first pieces of the process is we will actually just test removing things, flat out removing things from their website. So it'll be like, okay, look, you've got 8 things on your homepage. Let's create 8 different homepages, and each one we're going to remove one of the things from your homepage. So we'll have one version that removes the video, and one that removes the testimonials, and one that removes the, whatever you have on there. And then we'll split traffic between all those versions and see how they all convert. And that way we get a really, really quick data set and a quick pulse from the customers of what's actually helping them convert and what's not, right? Because, so I'll tell you a couple of pitfalls that a lot of companies fall into. The first one is heat mapping data. So heat mapping data is when you add this tool to your website that allows you to see where are people clicking, how far down the page are people scrolling
on the site,
on a website. Yeah. So you can, you take your website and you'll basically just record where are people clicking on the site, and then you get these hotspots on the site, right? So it's like, so you'll get, I get clients all the time that are like, why do we have that video on there? Well, because 70,000 people click on it, right?
Yeah.
And then my question to that, so what they will do is it's this confirmation bias. I think we should have a video there. We put a video there and tons of people clicked on it. So must be a good thing. The problem is going back to my very first conversation with the CEO, where he said, well, what has that done for our business? Like how many sales has that generated? That's the question they're not answering. They're going, oh, we're getting tons of clicks. Okay, well, how many of those turned into sales? They have no idea, right? They just assume that because something gets a lot of clicks and a lot of engagement that it should be there. And so then when I'll go in and I'll challenge it and I'll say, let's test removing it, I'd say probably 75% of the time we test removing the most clicked on thing on the homepage, conversion rates go up. And a lot of times, especially with videos, and a lot of times it's because, so one of the data points I'll look at with my clients is average time on site. And I would say the typical average time on site is like 1.5 to 2 minutes. So somebody will on average spend about 1.5 to 2 minutes on your website. Obviously, it's a lot more if they're really high intent and really engaged, and it's obviously a lot less if they're window shopping, right? But the average is probably 1.5 to 2 minutes. So if you consider that the average person is going to spend 1.5 minutes on your website, and you have a minute video on the homepage, that's eaten up a lot of their cognitive, like their attention span. And not only that, your video probably isn't as good as you think it is. And so they watch this video that's probably less compelling than just getting to whatever page you want them to get to. And now they're like, their attention span's gone. They're probably less convinced than they were before, and now they'd rather just bail, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of those things, so what I do at the beginning of my process is I'll just say, let's just challenge the status quo. You think you need all of this stuff on your website. Let's find out if that's true. Because it's probably not true for a lot of the cases.
And how many companies that you're working with, when you propose that, say, yeah, let's do that? And how many companies say, why would you do that? Do you know how much we spent on building this perfected website?
So I will say the response is equal to, it's in proportion to the size of the organization. So if they have a dedicated design team the website's their baby, and they did all kinds of user experience research, and they have an in-house user experience person that will come in and they'll tell me, they'll get on the calls and they get super defensive, and they'll be like, no, you have to understand, like, if they don't have that video, then they don't understand this thing that they need to see the next piece of content on there, and that, whatever. And they'll have in their mind, it's like, there's some really great reason. And to which I will always just say, look, I'm not saying that we need to get rid of the video. In fact, I don't think you should get rid of the video. I'm just saying, let's test it and let's see what happens when we remove it. And then it's not me saying that your layout sucks. It's your customers, right?
Yeah. And then you have to listen to your customer.
Yeah. And so that's the great thing, is what I do is it's not opinion based. It's not me coming in. I don't go in and work with clients and say, oh, your video sucks. This thing, you should get rid of this. It's me coming in saying, I'm going to assume that I know nothing. And let's assume that you know nothing too. Let's just pretend that we both know nothing, and let's start getting data. And that way, and like, best case scenario is we test removing the video and your conversion rate drops by 20%. Well, that's great, because now that video moves the needle.
Meaningful. Sure.
And in fact, we might see that the video dropped conversion rates by 20%, and your best selling products dropped conversion rates by 3%. So the funny thing about that is your video is like, 7 times more impactful than your best selling products are. So maybe that should be the first thing that they see when they get to the site, right? Yeah. And so that's really what I'm in the business of doing, is I come in and I say, let's assume that we know nothing. Let's use data to drive our decisions. And then as we get data around what things people like and don't like, we can do more of this, less of this.
I think that, just full disclosure, I think that we at eHub might steal that philosophy. We try to help customers make data-driven decisions. That's our foundation. And that's the best way to help a customer make a decision with data. But I'm going to utilize that. Let's assume that you don't know and we don't know. We're just going to test it. and then start. I think that's really good. I love that approach to it. It's like, hey, I'm not saying that I like it. I'm not saying that I hate it. I'm just saying we should test it. Let's figure it out together.
Now, I'll say there have been times where I will test removing something and conversion rates go up and the company decides to ignore that. So I had a client, it was a law firm, and they had a picture of their whatever partners, the law firm partners on the homepage. And we ran the test, removing the image, increased conversion rates by like 20%. And the law firm partner said, no, we're not removing that. Like that, we are the brand. We've got to be there. And so those are like major head scratcher moments to me where I'm like, all right. I mean, you literally know that like you're going to get 20% fewer leads by having it there. Yeah, we know that. All right.
Okay. Your decision. We run into that as well.
Yeah.
We'll provide a nice analysis that demonstrates by moving some things around and a significant cost savings and maybe transit times improve or stay the same. And people are like, nope.
Yep.
I'm not changing.
Yep.
I like what we're doing.
Yep.
That's kind of the maddening thing. Okay. So you have as I keep talking about this, you have all of this data that says CRO is super meaningful to helping businesses grow and drive revenue and growth and everything. So why isn't everybody doing that? Why are people still stuck on like, I just need to drive more traffic to the site? Why isn't everybody converted?
There's a few reasons. So I would say probably the most prevalent reason is what you described, which is we've all been using the web for at least 20 years now, maybe 30 years, right? Everybody thinks they're a website expert because we all have been to Apple's website and we love Apple's website, or everyone's been to Amazon's website. Everyone thinks they know what a great website is and should be. So I think part of it is nobody wants to challenge their expertise. Nobody wants to admit, maybe I don't know what our website should be, especially the CEO who, is like, I know everything here.
Sure.
Right. And so that's one big piece. Another big piece is it is resource intensive. So we were talking about this, earlier. In order to run an A/B test, you need someone to tell you what to test. So you need some strategy. You need a design, you need design resources to create the different test experiences. You need a development team or a developer that can build all these different versions. You need a tool that can split the traffic between all of them. And then you need someone who can analyze the results. And so most companies don't have that team in place, or they have those teams siloed, right? You have your developers over here that do what you tell them to do. And you have the design team that's making your business look nice, but they don't work together and there's no seamless process really, right? And then there's nobody whose job it is to optimize. So part of it is a team problem where you don't already have the team there. And then I would say, so the last reason is I use this analogy with my clients a lot. There's this story of this guy called the Flying Monk. So this is like one of the early attempts at building a flying machine, way before the Wright brothers. This monk builds this flying suit, and he built it to look like a bird.
Is this like a tale of a fable, or is this a true story?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's a fable or a true story. But the story goes anyways.
So the point of the story is
he builds this thing by looking at birds, and he goes, they have wings, they have feathers, and they have a tail. So he builds this costume for himself that has wings on it with feathers, in there and a tail, and goes and climbs up on a building and jumps off flapping his arms. And of course he, falls down and breaks his legs. And so, but the bottom line is the problem with that whole scenario is he didn't understand the principles of flight, right? All he was doing is looking at a bird and going, that thing can fly. What does it have? It has wings and feathers. That's all I need, right? So the biggest problem, I think, to people doing conversion rate optimization is you look at a business that is successful, like Apple. Apple's like the number one target because everyone loves how Apple's website
And look,
looks.
they have a video on their...
Exactly.
Wow,
yeah.
I need a video. And
Yes. And they've done testing and they have billions of dollars behind that website. So I know what they're doing works. And that is like the number one red flag in an organization is saying, I know what they're doing works, because I've worked with hundreds of companies. In fact, last year I had a client of mine. They owned two companies that both sold high-end watches. Okay. So two different brands, both sold high-end watches, plus minimum of plus $500 watches. Some of them were $5,000, $10,000. And because they had these two brands, similar price points, they said, well, we're essentially targeting the same people. So they just copied the website, right? Like both websites looked identical, just different products, but exact same website, same template, same layout. This one has a video here. This one has a video here. This one has 4 bestsellers here. This one has 4. So they just copied it. And so when I started working with them, I said, okay, we're going to optimize conversion rates. And they said, okay, let's just optimize conversion rates for this one. And we'll just take the learnings from that and apply it to this business. And I said, okay, maybe. But before we assume that we can do that, here's what I propose. Let's run the exact same test on both sites and let's see if we get the same results. And if we do, then great. We'll share results back and forth and we can apply best practices both places. Ran the same test, complete opposite results. In one case, removing the video increases conversion rates by 15%. In one case, removing the video decreases conversion rates by 10%. And so right away, right off the bat, we immediately just cut the legs out of that whole assumption that we can just do for this business what we did for this business. And so all companies that are doing let's copy Apple, let's copy our biggest competitor, they're all doing that same thing. They're assuming that what works for one brand will work for another, and it's a lie. And so, but it's a huge rabbit hole that businesses go down because it's easy. It's like, just copy what they did. That's the playbook right there. Just do what they did and it's going to work for us.
Yeah.
And so that's it's hard to get out of that ease of saying, okay, instead of copying someone, we actually maybe need to figure out our own stuff.
Interesting. You mentioned there can be 3 outcomes. Isn't that what you said? There can be 3 outcomes. Either, like, we'll just say removing it and
conversion rates go up.
Conversion rates go up. Removing it, conversion rates go down. Removing it, and there's no. You created 2 different, and there's
no impact. No change.
And there's no change. Okay, so how do you approach those 3 things differently? And are any of those a dead end?
No. Well, so here's what I'll say. If something improves conversion rates or decreases conversion rates, the approach is essentially the same. So a lot of times I'll give the analogy of we're kind of playing hot or cold with our audience, right? So like that game where you close your eyes and you're like, am I hot or cold? And if you're hot, you keep going in that direction, right? So if you find something that really improves conversion rates, so let's say we test adding testimonials to a page and that worked really well. Okay. So, wow, we just found that social proof really moves the needle. Let's do more of that. Let's figure out how many reviews should we have? What kind of reviews should we have? Should we show only positive reviews or positive and negative reviews? Should we have customer testimonial videos or just text reviews, right? Where should we put them? Should we have them all in the same spot? So you go deeper down that rabbit hole, right? Or the alternate, which is, we say, hey, removing the video decreased conversion rates by 20%. In other words, customers love the video, right? You do the exact same thing. We just learned that they love the video. Should we do more video? Where should we put it, right? So you're going to do the exact same thing, right? If you're hot or if you're cold, you go the opposite direction. You do the opposite of whatever you did. And if you're warm, you keep going. In the scenario where there was no impact, it's usually one of 2 things. Either you tested the wrong thing, okay? And that happens a lot, especially with companies that are doing their own testing. And I'll say, when companies do their own testing, the reason they test the wrong things is because they're not using a strategy. They're saying, I know what to do.
Sure.
Right. And then they just test their one idea. So they'll say, I know what to do. We need a video on the homepage. And they test it and it has no impact. Right. And it's like, and usually they'll say, well, that just means that our homepage is already optimized.
Yeah.
Which is totally wrong. What it means is your audience doesn't care about video. That was the wrong thing to test. Maybe instead of testing video, you should have tested value propositions. You should have tested layout. You should have tested, again, removing things, adding things, like that kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And so the approach when there's no impact on something is what you want to do is you want to take a strategic step back and say, what are we missing here? Did we have blinders on for this test? Were we only thinking about... So what I do with my clients to get around that mm-hmm. is instead of starting with a test idea, the test idea being, let's add video to the page. Mm-hmm. Instead of doing that, we ask what I call a business question. This is a high level question that doesn't have a yes or no answer. So a business question is like, what content should we have on the homepage? Right? So that has an infinite number of answers, mm-hmm. right? It's not just video. We could have a lot of stuff. So then you come up with your hypothesis, which maybe is, I think we should have video on the homepage, but you also want to go, what else could answer that business question? Okay. What should we have on the homepage? Well, we could have video. We could have a bulleted list. We could have an about us section. We could have testimonials. We could have a slider with our offers. We could have whatever, there's tons of stuff we could have. And so the business question helps you actually get out of the blinder approach and say, okay, our one idea didn't work. What are the other things that we didn't think about for this test that we should test? Right.
Gotcha.
So that's what you do when you have no impact is you get a broader perspective yes. and think about what else weren't we thinking about during mm-hmm. this test.
Gotcha. Okay. I just have a few more questions for you. I've already kept you here a long time. I appreciate all of your insight. And once again, come and listen to the workshop at Commerce Catalyst on September 5th. That should be a lot of fun. Do you have a favorite client? Do you have a favorite client story? And as soon as you answer that, I'm going to make you tell me the disastrous client story as well. So be prepared.
I have a few favorite clients. I will say, in terms of favorite client story. So I have a client that came to me pretty early on in their business journey, mm-hmm. and they had done quite a bit of research on what their website should be. They had a lot of very strong opinions on what we should and shouldn't do. And, even getting them to run an A/B test was like pulling teeth. The only reason that I did is because the guy who was running their traffic was like, we got to do this. You have to do this. Like, we're not going to be successful if you don't do this. So, mm-hmm. so I came in and again, going back to this whole existence, challenging assumptions philosophy. Mm-hmm. One of the first things that I did was I challenged a lot of assumptions they had, and they had one particular thing on their page. It was a mattress company. So they had these very expensive mattresses, and they had mm-hmm. this one section. It was on the homepage of their website. It's one section that like outlined several of the major value propositions of the product. And so I recommended removing it or testing removing it. And they said, well, no, there's no way that could possibly work. Like, they need that information mm-hmm. in order to know what the product even is. And of course, anytime I hear somebody say, well, the customer needs this, I say, really? Like, you want to put some money down on that? Are you willing to bet that section is actually improving conversion rates? Mm-hmm. And almost every time, people will be like, oh, no. Well, actually, I don't know, maybe, but so we tested these different things. We tested removing, and they actually bet on the outcome. They, not with me.
But I was like,
they bet internally because they're like, I think this one's going to work better. I think this one's going to work better. And so nobody voted for this one that removed this value proposition section. So anyways, ran the test, came back with the results, and removing that section actually doubled the conversion rate from the homepage. So people that came to the homepage converted twice as well without that section there. And it was one of those moments where really two things happened. The first thing is the client, of course, goes, how is that possible? Which is the right question, right? That's the right question, which is, why would somebody not want that? Let's think about that. Let's theorize on why would that section hurt our conversion rates by so much, right? That's a great question to explore. Yeah. The second thing that happened is they immediately, all of them, took a step back and said, okay, what do you recommend we test next? And so that's the mindset that I love for clients to have, like for any company to have, is a testing first mindset. Let's not assume anything. If we want to run a promotion on our site and we think we need a banner on the homepage that says what our promotion is that true? Do we actually need a banner on the homepage to promote the sale? Or is that actually the wrong move, right? And so, but I love it when I can work with a company and we get to the point where it's like, let's test everything. If we are planning on making this change on our site and we think we need it for branding purposes, let's first test it and see what our customers think. And if they hate it, then we're not going to force our customers into something they hate.
No.
Right?
Yeah. Now you know.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the client that you just couldn't, was there a client you just couldn't break through? It was a struggle the whole time.
So the client from hell story, and I got quite a few of them, but I would say that probably the number one actually had nothing to do with the organizational buy-in to the testing philosophy. The problem that I got myself in, and I think any new consultant and entrepreneur has been in this situation where you're trying to figure out, how do I position myself? Like, what does my package look like? Like, what does my offering look like? Right? How do I package all this up in a way and sell it to a client? What's the pricing like? Right? And so, inevitably, you're going to get people that either want to pay you hourly, or you're going to charge them project based, or you'll get clients that want to just pay on a variable basis, right? So they'll say, how about we do a profit share, a revenue share, that kind of thing, right? And so the first time I encountered that, I was like, sweet. Heck yeah. Like, I'm all in for a rev share because I know how much I can move the needle. And look, if I move the needle, if I improve your conversion rates by 10%, you're going to make $100,000 in additional revenue. And if we do a 30% rev share on increased revenue, like, I'm going to be set, man. Yeah. And so, so we did that. And we set up a rev share, and it was a rev share based on the increase in revenue, right? So if we run a test, it increases conversion rates by 10%, we calculate what the increase in revenue is, and that's what I, get paid for that month or whatever. They were super excited about it. I was super excited about it. What I didn't anticipate ahead of time was what this did to a client relationship. So what happened was, our first month of testing, I knocked it out of the park for him, right? And so, what I would have normally charged $5,000 a month for, now it was $40,000 that they were going to be paying me for. What that immediately did to the relationship is they went, no way. There's no way that's the result. Let me see the data again. Okay. Well, we had a promotion in there. I bet we would have sold that much anyways during that time. So let's take out that set of data. Well, yeah, but we did this. So we did a social post on that day. So that probably drove a bunch of, and so what they did was, instead of it being this win-win and collaborative approach, it instantly turned into a, us versus them kind of approach, where it's like, no, I don't want to, and so it was a disaster. It was just a nightmare. And then I am on the defensive, where I'm like, no. Let me re-explain to you this whole thing. And then they're like, well, no, we need to rerun this whole test, which is like, just start the whole thing over and do it all again. And so that's a situation where I realized very quickly that, at least for the industry that I'm in, I don't ever want to create a client scenario where they have the incentive to go, that's BS, there's no way. And I don't want to create a scenario where I feel like I have to, enforce the terms of the contract. Like, I don't like being in that kind of situation. And so instead of that, I've just moved to a flat rate model, where it's like, this is how much it costs. And if I make you, if we generate a ROI neutral test, then that's what you get. And if you make $150,000 off this test, then that's great. It's a huge win for you. But either way, like, listen, we're going to do this. Here's how much it costs. And that's the bottom line.
Can you put a number, can you put a percentage on the effect that you've had on the companies you've worked with, like generally?
So on average, I'm usually able to improve conversion rates by about 30% within a 6-month time frame. So I haven't had a client yet over the last, whatever it is, 11 years that I haven't been able to increase conversion rates for, but usually it's 20 to 30% increase. Now, I mean, obviously that's an average. And so there's some clients where we have way more, some it's way less, but yeah, I mean, I will say I haven't had a client yet where it hasn't been ROI positive. Especially when you have a company that's actually doing some kind of volume, right? Like, I mean, if you think about, if you're even doing $100,000 in sales through your site per month, if you can increase that by 10%, it's $10,000 in additional revenue per month with keeping all of your other marketing efforts the same, right?
Yeah.
And if we can do 30%, even better, right? So it's pretty easy to justify the cost of testing if you do it right.
Yeah. Yeah. Super, super meaningful. If you could do anything else right now and be successful at it, would you change what you're doing?
I love what I'm doing. I was having a conversation with a cousin of mine over the summer at a family reunion, and and he was talking to me about how much he hates his job and how much he hates going into work every day. And I didn't say this because the last thing you want to hear when you're talking about how much you hate your job is how much everyone else loves their job. Yeah. But I was just sitting there thinking to myself, like, I haven't felt like that in years. Like that, the dread of going into work or, whatever it is. Like, I really love what I'm doing. I think if there was anything else that I would like to do, and I honestly don't know that I could do this and be successful with it, but I love the psychology aspect of what I do. I love learning how people think and why they make the decisions they do. So, like the guys that do like the Freakonomics books, I love that stuff. Like behavioral economics, I love that because it's like psychology paired with economics. I would love to do that. I don't know that I could be super successful doing that unless you publish a book like Freakonomics or something.
Are you going to publish a book? Are you going to write a book? Have you thought about writing a book?
I've thought about it. I have put together an outline. I don't know that I ever will. And part of it is because similar to the reason, like I hate creating presentations, I hate writing. Like I feel like I'm pretty good at writing, but I hate doing it. And so I would have to dictate the book or I would have to just record or take a sum total of a bunch of, interviews or something and then have a ghostwriter like put it together into a book format for me. And something about that just doesn't sound very exciting.
Is your book, obviously based on your work, is your book like best practices or is your book just a bunch of case studies?
So honestly, my idea, and I thought about doing a podcast at one point too. I actually wouldn't make it website specific. So I would make it more along the lines of how to prove anything or how to test anything. And I would take the concepts of A/B testing and conversion rate optimization and apply them to a variety of different scenarios. So one instance that I would use this is, you take a dating profile, for instance, and you say, does the color of shirt you wear affect how frequently people respond to you, right? Does wearing a red shirt or a black shirt or a white shirt or whatever, does it get you more or less or the same amount of engagement, right? Are people more interested in you if you wear a red shirt or whatever?
Yeah.
So a lot of politicians, their testing teams will do this. So like when Obama was running for president, they tested, what if we have him in a blue button-up shirt
or the
button-up rolled up t-shirt, polo, what's the best look for Obama in his campaigns or whatever. Like it's a fascinating concept, right? And so the concept of A/B testing and of conversion rate optimization, you could apply to a bunch of different places, right?
I think that would be fascinating.
Or A/B testing parenting strategies or whatever, right?
Yeah. It's applicable all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. Before I let you go, just a few more questions on kind of like best practices. Like, for example, foundational principle or business principle concepts, like what are the things that you think over your 15 plus year experience, what are the things that you think you do really well?
I think I'm good at coming in and cutting through a lot of the organizational blinders or nonsense and getting down to like, what do we actually know? So again, I have these conversations all the time and I'll say, okay, well, why do we have this on here? Who's your target customer? Tell me about your target customer. And then they'll tell me this big story of Sally, who, is a stay-at-home mom and, whatever, blah, blah, blah. They'll give me this whole song and dance. And I'm very good at not buying into that. Now, what I will say is I don't discard anything that my clients
that could be the truth.
It could be 100% the truth, but there's a lot of assumptions that businesses draw based on these customer profiles that they build or this customer research they did. And I think I'm pretty good at coming in and saying, because there's a lot of people that do what I do that'll go, they don't want to ruffle feathers, right? And so they'll come in and just go, oh, okay. Well, okay. Let's assume that all of that's true. And then let's come in and build all of our experiments based on those assumptions. Whereas my approach is more, maybe that's 100% accurate and maybe it's not. And so I think I'm really good at doing that. I think I'm good at working with big personality types because a lot of times I'm either working with marketing director, creative director, especially creative directors have very strong feelings about what they've done. Or I'm working directly with CEOs. And so I'm working with these people. It was actually one of the hardest things for me when I first started a business was I had been an employee my whole life. And so talking to a CEO was the scary thing. That was the scary conversation. Like these are like successful people.
Yes.
And these are like
all the
smart
answers.
people. Yeah. And like, I'm just some dumb kid that dropped out of college. Like I don't know anything. And so it was very intimidating for me to talk to these people. And I think I've gotten really good at being able to engage in those conversations and push back. Again, I think probably one of the most important elements of what I do is being able to push back and say, look, I know you really want to push this branding initiative. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but you need to test this ahead of time. Look at what happened with this other client of mine. They pushed this huge initiative. Conversion rates tanked. They lost $100,000 a month. Like you don't want to be that. And so let me help you make smarter decisions. Like I think I've gotten pretty good at doing that.
Well, the way that you push back doesn't feel confrontational.
Right.
It just feels like we're in this together.
Right.
And let's find the solution. I'm not saying you're right. I'm not saying you're wrong.
Right.
Let's just find the right way to do it.
Right.
I love that. Where do you think, as you look over your career, where do you think you can improve, or where do you think you are constantly improving?
So I think one of the things that I have struggled with, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs do because of the kind of brain, and personality type you need to start a company, but I've never been good at remembering the details. So if I have a conversation with somebody and I commit to doing 5 things, right? There's usually 3 things that I'm like, heck yeah, I'm all for that. And I go and do it. And then we get to the next conversation and I'm like, shoot, I forgot that I said I was going to do that. You're right. I should have done that. And that has even carried on into invoicing my clients. Like, there have been many times where I have missed invoicing clients months in a row. And it's like, shoot. Like now I got to send this client 3 invoices all in 1 month. Like it looks terrible.
And they're really going to like that.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. Wait, I thought we were paying this guy, whatever, $6,000 a month, not 18,000 a month. Oh no, it's not 18,000. This is my bad. I'm sorry. Whatever. It's just super embarrassing. So those like the housekeeping items I'm terrible at. And so, I mean, some of the things I've been able to find hacks for, like I've got a virtual assistant now that does all my invoicing. So I don't miss that. And I mean, AI assistants now are fantastic. So I always have my AI assistant join all of my Zoom calls and then it sends me the email with all the action items after. So there are some things that like help me, but that's still a major weakness of mine. And I mean, my wife will tell you all about how how many things I missed doing that I was supposed to do.
It's almost, I hear you. I do the same thing. I feel terrible about it. And it's almost like there's not really an excuse because with all of the technology that's available, that is all around us all the time, remembering simple tasks should be like, but I just can't even remember to look up the simple task. Like,
yeah.
And all of the note taking apps and everything else, and it keeps it nice and organized, and you should be able to, I'm the same way.
Well, and again, it's a matter of, part of it is I need to learn to be more responsible, and I need to figure out a system that works for me. And part of it is I need to understand that that's a limitation of mine, and I need to figure out how to compensate for that. Right. And so, I mean, fortunately, if I'm really, really good at what I do, then a couple things falling through the cracks is fine, but I would prefer to not have that happen at all.
I don't know. Maybe there's lots of people that could pick up those pieces. So maybe that's
Yep.
Maybe that's a place to improve. Well, anyway, hey, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate it. I learned so much. I love what you do. Tell that you're passionate about it. And it seems like it's, the solutions that you provide are so meaningful and so helpful. It's like one of those things that kind of makes you scratch your head when people don't utilize it.
Yeah.
But that's your market, is finding all those people who haven't utilized it yet. So congratulations. Thanks for coming to visit us, and we'll see you September 5th at Commerce Catalyst.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be great.
It'll be a good time.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me.
Where can people find you before we let you go?
So my website is smart-cro.com. I'm on LinkedIn, so feel free to, chat me up or whatever.
Chris Daley. The one and only Chris Daley. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks.
See you soon. Thank you for listening to the Know Your Ship podcast presented by eHub. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.